So we are going to be looking into the details of bones and weights with hair, but I specifically asked that people have already watched the previous video or had the previous class because that's everything that you need to know for the actual porting process. And this one is going to be more kind of like for demonstration. So you guys, I ask you to pick a hair if you want to play around with it, but it's not necessary. It's just mostly additional knowledge. You can take notes if you want, but to actually like follow along everything that I'm doing might be a little difficult because hair is always going to be different from model to model. So if I am doing something that works for my model, it might not work for yours. But it's hopefully knowledge that you can like put together eventually and figure out how you need to work with whatever hair you're interested in. It's all about practice as well. Um, all right, we are already on the uh, it's already the time for the class, so I'm going to just show you very briefly this cheat sheet that Phyllis put together for me. I am very grateful to him for it. So it's it has all the information about how the hair material works, how the normal maps and the different channels that they have effect on the hair. This is not very relevant for what we're going to do right now, but it's definitely super helpful if you're going to be like porting a hair from a different game and you need to like figure out the what to do with the textures that you already have, or if you're making a hair from scratch, this is going to be very helpful information to have. um, Going to just go over it very simply because it's if you've never done anything related to modding with textures, some of it might not even make sense, so I don't want to spend too much time on it. But it says that the red and green control the height, which is basically what is going to give some illusion of texture to um, to your hair. So it's not necessary to actually make a high poly model. Green is up and red is down. As Phyllis points out here, it's difficult to explain in only a few sentences. So I would recommend looking, if this is something that you're interested in, if you want to do hair from scratch or things like that, I highly recommend looking into terms like height and occlusion, reflectiveness. Um, all of that is going to affect a little bit of how your hair is going to look. So the red and green is again like the texture, the blue we don't use it, and the alpha channel is something that affects the transparency. White is visible, black is transparent. Um, then the multimap has its own channels as well, and that's going to affect red, the shadows, green, the reflectiveness. We don't use the blue channel, and the alpha is going to tell us about the highlights. So if you want to add highlights, that I think this might be the most important one, the most used one. If you want to add highlights to your hair, you need to affect the alpha channel. Keep in mind that in order to do anything with these channels, you probably need either Photoshop or GIMP. These are the type of programs that have a built-in software for well, working with this kind of stuff. You cannot do this like in I don't know, in Psy or in Clip. So keep that in mind. If you need help, no, I am just doing an introduction. Hi, Rika. Oh my God, you can watch the video later. Don't worry about it. So just so you know, I'm sharing this information also. Oh yes, that's true. Photopia is something that Feli shared and is very, very good for this kind of stuff, and it's free. So definitely look into it if this is something that you're interested in. Now, getting into hair bones. You might or might not know this, but the bones in Final Fantasy are named in Japanese. So it's a little difficult at first to really remember what they are. Hopefully, if you continue, trying to do stuff with the bones and the weights, you will get used to them and you will be able to remember them. But basically, the most important bones that don't have physics and that are going to always show up in your hair, it's Kao, which is the face or the head, and QB is the neck. So usually, something that is important to remember is that if you have weights on the cow head, it's because well, in the cow bone, sorry, it's because you want that particular part of the hair to be stuck with the head and move with the head. So, for example, a ponytail requires that you have a little bit of weights at the top of the ponytail, so that way it's connected to the head. We will look into that in a moment. Then we have the bones with physics. All of these, CAMI A, CAMI B, CAMI FL, CAMI FR, are going to be the ones that most hairs, if not all hairs, have. Some exceptions might be like hair that is specifically for an NPC. Maybe those particular bones are not going to be there. But basically, it's A and B is for the length of the back, and F, L, and FR are going to control the sides, left and right. So the reason that sometimes bones can be a little tricky with hair is because the hair that you want to port has other bones and uses those bones instead for a better look. And it might not have these bones or it might not have them weighted. So you want to make sure that whatever hair that you want to use, that the bones that it has is already in the hair that you're porting it to, or the race that you're porting it to. Remember that Viera, both, well, particularly female Viera, have very few bone options. That's why some of their animations look very rigid. Um, so the option to change the hair will depend on what bones you're using. Um, these are the extra bones. They are found in uh, hairs and in different areas as well. Like they don't always work the same way depending on. And Felice was very nice and like mentioned here what every single one of them are usually used for. So again, I'm going to share this link for everyone at the end so it doesn't get lost in the chat. But this is a good cheat sheet, basically. This is something that if you are very new to any of this and you are not familiar with the bones, it will help you choose better. So the way that last class we finished, uh, Jesus, I am getting a spam while I'm away. The last time when we were doing this, I finished with my hair already ported, but I specifically didn't do anything with the weights, right? So you can tell right away that it's going through the body and it's not doing what it's supposed to. It's just like a stiff board. So what we're going to do is first you have your hair and you have to know what weights it has. So in order to look at the bones, you can, usually they are already showing, but if they are not showing, you can go here to the overlays and click on bones. Now, this might not be very helpful because, especially if you're not very familiar with the bones, you don't know what they even are. So we're going to use here the object data properties, and you can go to, let me find it. Oh, sorry, I need to click the actual bones. So once you have selected the bones, you can go to this one, the object data properties, but it's going to look different because it's only for the bones. Then you go to the viewport display and you can show the names of the bones. So in this case, it's showing me the bones of the hair only. I'm going to get rid of the face and the ears right now because I don't want them to get in the way. And you can tell like, okay, so here we have the additional bones, the EX bones. We have the BA and the BB. So the majority of hair options for males don't have any of these bones. If you want to make a hair compatible with males, especially long hair, it's better that you find a hair that is already properly weighted. So, for example, this is Kiwiforma's Simple from March 2023. And I'm going to, since it's only for females, obviously it's not ready for males. So I'm going to instead bring Feli's conversion of the Vena hair, and we're going to compare it so you guys can see. Again, I click the bones and I click to show the names. You can see that they are placed in the same area, but they are different bones for sure. So we have the Cami A and the Cami B, the Cami FL and the Cami FR. So these are the ones that every single one has. There's this particular hair that I chose also has some additional bones in here, but what I want, or what it is more important to me, is that the Cami A and Cami B are already weighted. So keep in mind that what I'm showing you here is kind of like the easy cheat or quick method to get this type of stuff sorted out. You can definitely go and manually paint everything and stuff like that, but especially if you're new, this is going to be very jarring. So what I do is I bring this hair that already works and is already weighted. And actually, I highly recommend that, maybe not so much for hair, but for other things that require weighting, that you add an animation into the Blender file so you can watch it and see if it's working correctly. There is a guide about it already posted in our guide section if you want to use that. It's pretty simple. It already has the files for it. But because it already has the files for it and it's specific, like it's a very base, let's call it, I guess it's a base skeleton. It doesn't have any of the additional hairs, so it might be very helpful with gear or with hair that has the basic bones. But if you want to test weight other stuff that is more complicated, it might not be that helpful. Um, but anyway, that's just a recommendation. I already ported this hair. I already have it working in the game, but I'm going to show you the process that I did. Now that you know that the hair has the bones, I can get rid of them. I don't really need to see them here. And I specifically chose a hair that is, if you see, very similar, at least in size. It's very convenient that the Vana hair covers almost everything, like almost every inch of my hair, because it means that when it copies the weights, I probably won't have to do almost any adjustments, if at all. So in this case, I am going to first, now that I have all of my hair in position, I come here to the data, object data properties of the hair, and I'm going to slowly remove all of the vertex groups. Since we're going to copy the weights, we don't want any of this information here. Um, yes, of course, Rika, please rest. So here you can get rid of all of the bones, all of the vertex groups with this little minus symbol. And you want to do that with every part of the hair. We're going to individually remove the bones. And then we're going to copy everything from the Vana hair into this. Keep in mind that this hair in particular is just basically one piece. It's fragmented, but it's one piece. So I only need this particular hair. If you have hair that is like a ponytail and bangs and stuff like that, it requires a little more fiddling around. You're going to need to like find specific parts. You're going to transfer specific vertex groups instead of everything. Uh, so right now I'm just trying to keep it as simple as possible. All right, so we bring here the Vana hair, and as you can see, it already has all of its weights already. And if I go into weight paint mode over here, I can see what parts of the hair are already working. So this is something that Feliz weighted himself because obviously the Vana hair didn't have these bones. So Feliz had to like manually come into this section and change the hair. But what we're doing is trying to avoid that. We're trying to take a shortcut. Um, and yes, the this is being recorded right now, Smalls. Don't worry. Um, is everyone having problems with the stream, or are we doing okay? Should I change the settings? Okay. All right, no worries. You can watch it later. Don't worry. Okay. So these weights, if you don't know anything about how weight painting works, the easiest way to put it is that the different colors are going to affect how the model is going to work with the bones. So if you select each of the bones, you will see what is affecting or how much um, of the paint, weight paint, is affecting the hair. Um, Feliz in particular decided to put in Cami A, that is the first section of the long hair, make it very light because we want this section to be more flowy, right? It's very fluffy hair, so he specifically wanted this section to kind of like float a bit, but the next section would be a little heavier. So in order to mark that gravity, we're going to use the red here at the end. And I can show you actually in my game how it usually looks. Uh-huh. Oh wait, this is Kiwi's here. So you can see how like it moves. It has like a little sorry, it has a little like wiggle to it, but because the back of it is heavy, it kind of looks very nice, like it drops over the shoulders. These weights are not a perfect match with the hair that I want, because the hair that I want is a lot straighter. So obviously it's not going to be as flowy in that case. But that is more like if you want to be very accurate, if you really care about details like that. Usually for me, it's like as long as it moves, I don't care too much if it's super realistic, right? So that will depend on you and your personal taste. Let me move this down a little. But anyway, so now that I have my hair ready, I would recommend that you check, especially the one that you are bringing this from. The hair has to be one single unit. If it's in different parts, make sure to join it by selecting all of the parts and doing Control J. And once it's one unit, now we can transfer everything one by one. So the way that we're going to do this is I'm going to select the Vena hair, then by pressing down Control, I'm going to select the other hair, and then I'm going to uh, move into weight paint. Please be careful with this. It has to be in object mode when you're selecting. Everything that you do selecting has to be in object mode. Then you will move to weight paint. Then you will click on weights and you will do transfer weights. So right now it just did it automatically. I'm going to open here the menu for transfer mesh data. Um, I can see here the settings that it's using, and you can actually see, because I selected the my new hair, it already has ported one specific bone with its weights. So this is what we're going to do. We changed the settings from vertex mapping. The nearest vertex, we're going to do nearest face interpolated. I have also seen people do nearest edge, but the important thing is that it's either face or edge interpolated. And then in the source layer, we're going to set it as by name. So now you can see that it has ported all of the parts that I want, and I can check it here. I will look here and I do, okay, Sevo-C and QB doesn't have much going on. Okay, cow looks fine. I have a little bit on L and R, but it's very, very faint. But the important thing for me is the Kami A and B. Okay, it looks exactly I like it does. There is a slight difference in how the left side and the right side bones work. I can see that this one is a lot longer. So depending if I want to make changes, I could maybe do some adjustments here. But for the most part, this hair is a lot like the original one. So I don't particularly care about the small details, and I can just leave it like that. So after I did this, I recommend, especially if you have many parts, to either mark it or like write something, rewrite the name or something, or just make it invisible so you can move on to the next part. And we're going to do the same. You're going to go to object mode. You're going to select your hair. It has to be visible. And then you move to the next part of the hair and you transfer weights. And again, object mode, deselect the last part that I did, select the next one, and transfer weights, object mode, here in the next part, weight paint, transfer weights, here in the next one. You don't have to do the making the hair invisible. I just do it because I have a hard time keeping track of the hair that I already weighted, and that has given me trouble before. So I just want to make sure that I am not repeating things or accidentally skipping something. And this last mesh is only the decorations, but I kind of wanted to move along the same way that the hair does. So I'm also going to transfer the same weights. It might not look good in the game, and if that's the case, then I would have to adjust the hair, sorry, the weights of this particular material. But first, you need to test it. So with this, um, we have already our weighted hair. However, you might remember that this is a hair that um, has different bones. We need to steal the bones that the Banah hair has. So you can just select everything, and you, by doing control, no, not sorry, shift, you can, pressing down shift, you can move everything to the end root of the original hair. Now first is going to put it on the ground. That's completely normal. If it does, you can just go into the object properties, and in the rotation X, you just put the 90 degrees. So very slowly you can just start straightening the hair, putting it in the correct angle. Oops, I already did this one. See what I mean? Okay, so now that I moved it, I can get rid of this skeleton and this hair completely. But keep in mind that the hair is still pointing to the last skeleton. So we need to individually go to the each mesh and then select the modifier properties. And then you need to make sure that the new end root is in the armature modifier. So in this case, now we are in the end root 001. So I'm going to change the object into end root 001 in every single part, in every single mesh. This is just telling the hair, hey, you have a new skeleton now, so please animate according to that. You can do this in whatever order you want. Like usually I actually move the hair into the new skeleton first and then I do the weighting, but it's not important in what order you do it. So I could, now I can just go select the hierarchy, and well, I can eliminate the Banah hair if I want. I usually leave it invisible because if I have any problems or if I want to reweight things, it's already there. So when I select the hierarchy, you can see that it's not selecting this part. It's not selecting the Banah hair specifically because I hit it. So after this, I'm going to export things, and you're going to do the same, exactly the same process that we did in the previous class, in the previous video. You do limit to selected objects. You're going to remove bake animation, remove add leaf bones. This is important because if it adds extra bones, sometimes funny things happen. And then in geometry, we remove apply modifiers, and you can just export it and use it like this. Now I already went into the trouble of like importing this into text tools, and I already made it into a mod bag and brought it into the game because this is something that we already saw in the previous class, and hopefully you don't need to see it all over again. Uh, but basically, um, I'm going to test it now. There you go. So let me go very quickly into GPO so I can show you the animation without having to move everything. Um, right, so you can see that it animates exactly like the other hair does, which is the middle is very flowy and the back is the very end of it is like heavier, so it kind of like moves a little stronger than like a little heavier than the rest. This, for my own preferences, would be fine. I wouldn't want to do anything else. If you are pickier, if you actually want to do more realistic weights, then you will be like, all right, I'm going to edit the hair in Blender so this part is less flowy, or maybe I make this part as flowy as the first one because I think that that would look nicer in this particular hair. It's all about becoming familiar with the bones, with how the weights affect the hair. Definitely something that requires some experience, and you can just do it as many times as you well. Come back to Blender, edit things um, in weight paint, and do it as many times as you need. Export it into the game and try it over and over again. It's something that you personally have to decide. Are you happy with it, or do you want to continue fiddling with it? Um, so this is just for, again, the easy version. I'm going to also very briefly show you um, a thing that I decided to do with a hair that actually Safer Tofu lended to me. Uh, Let me see. Okay, so this hair is a mashup that Safer Tofu uh, did with some of Crystal's different hair. And you can see from the beginning, if we go and look at the bones, you can see that this one is already rigged for Cami A and Cami B, right? So this hair is already appropriate for males. It's going to work fine because these two bones are the basic bones. So if I go into the game and I do the cranberry hair, I'm just gonna change what number it is. So this hair is already weighted, as you can see, but it's a little like it obviously doesn't move super naturally because it only has two bones. So that's just the limitations of certain things, that you will only have certain hair, well, certain options with certain hair. Luckily, we do have some hairs that we can exploit. Very recently, this is something that probably a good number of people already knew, but for both Felice and I, it was like a really nice surprise seeing that this could be done. And I only learned it because of a tutorial on Twitter by Millie, who is at Lay Final Fantasy 14. Lay spelled Ley. I asked them for permission to take the tutorial that they did and kind of like make it into its own um, guide. But in the meantime, while I'm still doing that, I want to share what they taught people on Twitter, which is that you can use the Leveler braid to give the characters with less bones more options for weights. So that's what I did. I'm going to show you right now. Um, the way that well, first I'm going to show you actually, let me show you is it this one? No, this one. Okay, so we have our default um, hair, Cami A, Cami B, and that's about it. Uh, the the near uh, hair has a lot of bones that most hair don't have. So if you have like bangs and you have like head pieces and stuff like that, this is actually also a very good hair to play with. And uh, now we also have the Alice hair that I'm assuming is the same as uh, yeah, I'm assuming it's the same as uh, Alfino's hair, but basically it has one, two, three whole bones that we can use for weights, and it sadly doesn't have other options, like for example the Cami FR and the ones that goes here in the sides, they would be missing. But if obviously your hair is more ponytail than anything else, I think that it's still worth using instead. Um, so what I did was, um, now let me open the correct one. Uh, I ported the hair into that skeleton, right? I did the same thing that I just showed of like taking the pieces and putting them in the correct end root and then assigning it. And then what I did was the Alice hair. Obviously, I cannot like I cannot give exactly the same weights to the front because the front here has like a lot of additional stuff going on. But I can at least give the pony the exact same weights. So I separated. Um, let me let me make this all invisible. I separated the Alice hair, made sure that only the ponytail remained all together, and I used a ponytail with the particular hair over here. The way that Millie recommends doing it is you first select the ponytail that you want, then you select the Alice ponytail, and then you're going to do shrink wrap modifier. So you go to the modifier properties, you add a modifier, and you select shrink wrap. Now, the shrink wrap modifier is usually just going to wrap something around the object that you select. So in this case, I can select here individually the target, whatever I want, or I can use the eyedropper and select the Alice tail. It says fail to set value. That's not very helpful. Oh, sorry, it's because I was doing in the wrong pony. Let me do that in the correct pony. Uh, there we go. So now my ponytail is like completely wrapped around the Alice hair. Don't worry, we can undo this. But I want to do it because when I transfer the weights, I want it to be as close to the bones as possible. I want them to be literally on top of each other. So I'm going to select I can get rid of this. I'm going to select the Alice hair, then my normal tail. Make sure that you don't have any bones anymore before you do this. And then I select this, and I do the same thing, which was weight paint, weights, transfer weights. And I need to make sure that my settings are the same, nearest face interpolated, and by name. So now when I have when I go to my ponytail, I can go to the modifier properties and I can just get rid of the shrink wrap modifier. So it's going to go back to normal. Now, this can have different results. Don't. This is mostly to copy the same way that the bones are assigned. If you look right now at for example, if you look at the information here, uh, I didn't have the. Let me change this one to the Alice hair first. So the Alice hair has no weights here, but I believe that it only has it here and here in C and Gao, which I'm not sure is accurate. I might have done something different because I remember that Millie showed how it affects these actual bones. But no matter, like you have to keep in mind, like, all right, so if this doesn't seem right, if this doesn't, like cow, remember that is the bone for the head. So I probably don't want it affecting this thing over here. I want it here where it's like connecting everything into the head, right? So my particular weights didn't work as intended, but I want to manually adjust the weights. So it's not going to be a big problem for me in this case. I did already. Let me just open it as it was. I did already go through the process. I can show you just very simply, like something that I learned from Felice, and that is freaking godsend, is using the gradient tool. Let me get rid of this. I don't know why I have this open anymore. Um, So, for example, here, as I said, the cow bone, I'm making sure that it's connected to the head by making it red. That way, the ponytail knows that it's supposed to stick to the head as close as possible. The QB bone, I didn't put anything. I could add a little bit here because when you turn around, you want the hair to not get in the way of the neck. But more importantly, the actual ponytail, I put green on these particular sections because I wanted to be flowy. Here at the very end, I made them a lot darker because, a orange redder tone because I wanted to be heavier. And with this, this was just doing everything with the gradient tool like this, and you just need to click and drag, so it's very intuitive in my opinion. The only problem is that you might do something like, actually the weights that I'm showing you right now are slightly different to how I left them, because when you play around with weights, it's very common that you're like, oh, okay, this looks perfect. I think that this is going to work just fine. And then when you go into the game, or not even into the game, when you go into text tools freaks out and it's like, these weights don't make sense. You need to. I'm going to basically reset your weights completely because they are not compatible with the game the way that you did them. So in order to prevent that, you can like here I'm going to show you. Uh, I will select. I'm going to make this a very light green, and then I'm going to put the weight in 0, so my next gradient is going to be all blue. and I'm going to leave it like this. And in my opinion, this should work. I shouldn't have to do anything else with this ponytail. But it's possible that it needs to be adjusted. So whenever you finish your weight painting, when you're like, all right, I think I'm good, you go into weights, then you go into limit total. This is because as it says here, it limits the form weights associated with a vertex to a specific number by removing lowest weights. So there is a limit of 4, uh, basically by number of weights per vertex for Final Fantasy. So whenever you do something very crazy, like I'm going to put it all red here, and I go into weights and I tell it to limit total, usually what it's going to do is it's going to make sure that you don't have an excess of number of weights per vertex. And then you need to set on normalize all. So it's the sum of all weights. Once I do this, it should, in theory, have made this particular thing that I made, um, workable for text tools. But it's as it's weights can be very finicky. It can require a lot of trial and error. um, I spent like an hour or something like that trying to make weights for this pony because I was like, oh, this totally makes sense. And then I would put it in Textiles and Textiles said, no, try again. So I had to come back and figure out what was doing it. Sometimes it can give you that error, the error that says like, this has extremely abnormal weights. That's when Textiles decides to reset your weights. Usually that can also be because you have many, maybe like, for example, I have cow. Imagine that if for the head, like it's supposed to be the part that is adjusted to the head, and I put some weights that don't make sense in the end of the ponytail. Maybe in that case, Textiles is going to be like, this doesn't make sense because this is the head uh, this is a head bone, so I'm going to undo it. There can be many different reasons why Textiles acts up and tells you it's not going to accept your weights. But if when you finish everything, you use limit total and then normalize all, you will almost always have a working pony. Now, when I ported it, I think it's in the hair 15. Uh, when I ported it, it did give me some warnings, but these are the kind of warnings that thankfully you can ignore, which is like oh, this is not it. Let me, cranberry, there we go. So when I import this, normally it gives me an error saying like vertices had major corrections made to their weight data, but that's it. It's not going to reset them. It's just like basically warning me this is not what most hair models look like weights like waist wise. So it's just telling you like be careful, you're doing something funny, but normally it's fine. You can just ignore that particular warning. So with this one, I can show you now. First, this is the weights as they are right now, right? Like they look fine. They're pretty good, keeping in mind that it's only 2 bones. But now I'm going to change, and I'm going to use the actual hair uh, that I fixed, or I played with, because I don't know if I fixed it, but I definitely played with it. And now you can see that it has a more hair-like movement to it, just because I added bones that are actually meant for it, right? There are some aspects that still need fixing. This hair is, these weights are definitely not finished yet. you can see that the pony looks pretty good. It's attached to the head and it's moving like it's supposed to. But you might notice that I made a mistake with the weights in the back of the head. So the back of the head moves a little bit, like it's a little bit of pudding. Might not be very noticeable here, but sometimes you can see this the scalp in some animations. Another thing that I still would need to fix is the front, because like I said, the Alice hair doesn't have a right bones for this. So it looks pretty okay, but sometimes like when there's wind, it just moves on its own a little bit and it's a little silly. It's also kind of like skewed to the left. But you know, all in all, it looks pretty okay. If I don't want to continue fooling around with it, I would consider it already done. But I do want, this is my first time really doing hand painted weights myself with hair. So I definitely want to keep playing with it and see if I can make the front a little bit nicer, or what variations of the weights I can do to make it move more naturally in the front. Look here, you can see that it's kind of trying to run away. So it does strange things right now because it doesn't have the right bones for it, and you have to get a little creative. But that's pretty much it. That's the process that you should follow if you are porting a hair that doesn't have the bones that you require. You can uh, like individually export as many different hairs as you want and compare, does it have the same bones or not. There is unfortunately not a document right now that like puts together what hairs have what bones. I would like to do something like that, or at least like something like these are the top 5 hairs that you want to use for different bones. It requires some figuring out of your own in that aspect, but try to compare, like, all right, so if my hair has bangs and it has a ponytail, I'm going to probably try experimenting first with a hair that has bangs and a ponytail. But as I mentioned with the 2B hair, you'll be surprised that apparently some particular hairs have their own unique weights. And oh, the one thing I did forget to mention, and oh, I can't believe I did. Before I imported this with the new bones, I have to make sure that the whatever model I'm on, it doesn't matter what model it is, it has to have the Alice extra bones. So if you see when you go to hair 174, I think that is the Alice hair, right? You can see in the metadata that it has assigned the 175 hair in this case. So this is saying like these are the extra skeleton settings that it has. So before you export your hair, you want to make sure that, okay, so if I'm going to install it in number 15, I need to go to the metadata of number 15. I need to select here in the extra skeleton settings. Oops, Textile's frozen me. You need to go and select the same number, 175, and save it. You have to do this before you export your hair. This is something that comes in the cheat sheet that Felix put together for me as well. First, you have to save the skeleton, then you export, because if not, it's going to replace the bones that you brought in. Other additional indications about this that also come in the guide, do not try to add your own bones, and do not try. Well, I know that some people just rename them. I think that when the hair has bones in the same location but just different names, that's fine. But keep in mind that in many cases it might turn out not great. So it's always better that you go into Blender, bring the hair that you want, and steal the end root from it. Then you can come to text tools and export it uh, before after you have already said what are the extra skeleton settings that you want. Um, and that's pretty much it. It's a simple process in theory, but it's a lot of trial and error. I think that is all that I need to cover. I can give you the link to what Felis put together for me. Again, this is going to probably be posted in the resources, and we will probably like slowly add more stuff to it because it's very, very helpful. It has a lot of information, but I think it could still use a few additions, especially regarding the hairs that are already uh, versatile and you can play around with. Um,